I still remember the day my son slammed the door in my face. It was raining, and the sound of thunder felt quieter than the silence that followed his words. "You can't stay here anymore, Mom," he said, his voice trembling, not from guilt, but from something colder, like shame hiding behind pride. For a second, I thought he was joking. The same boy whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose dreams I'd funded through endless double shifts, was now staring at me like I was a stranger trespassing in his perfect little life. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was confused. I stood on that porch, soaked to the bone, clutching the small suitcase that held everything I owned. Behind him, I could see the warm glow of the living room lamp. It was my lamp. The house I'd bought, the one he was living in, had my name etched into every corner. From the kitchen tiles I'd chosen to the front door, I'd painted myself one spring afternoon when he was still in college. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice breaking, "what are you saying?" He looked away. It's not a good time right now. Jess and I need space. You can stay somewhere else for a while." Jess, his fiancée. I'd never liked her. Not because she wasn't polite, but because she had a way of smiling that never reached her eyes. Everything about her was rehearsed, like she'd practiced how to sound gentle without ever meaning it. I had paid for Ryan's education, supported his every ambition, and when he brought Jess home, I welcomed her as best I could. But something in her eyes told me she'd already decided I didn't belong. The rain grew heavier, soaking through my sweater. "You're kicking me out?" I asked, still hoping he'd step aside, still praying this was some misunderstanding. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Mom, it's not like that. It's just temporary." "Temporary?" I echoed. "Where am I supposed to go?" He didn't answer. Jess appeared behind him, wearing one of those oversized sweaters that made her look fragile. "We can call you when things settle," she said softly. But her tone had finality in it, like a door being locked from the inside. I wanted to scream, to remind him of the nights I stayed awake, worrying about his future, of the times I skipped meals so he could afford books and tuition. But my words got trapped somewhere deep in my throat. I realized something painful in that moment. Sometimes the people you build your world around forget that you were the one who built it. So I left. I walked down the steps, every footstep splashing into puddles that mirrored the house I was leaving behind. The streetlights blurred through the rain, and by the time I reached the corner, I couldn't tell if my face was wet from the storm or my own tears. For 2 weeks, I stayed with an old friend, pretending I was fine. I told her I was just visiting, but every night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing Ryan's voice echoing in my head. "You can't stay here anymore." I tried calling him. No answer. I sent a few texts, just to check if he was eating properly, if he needed anything. Silence. The same boy who used to call me 3 times a day from college, just to tell me he'd passed another test or cooked his first real meal, now couldn't find the time to say hello. Then one afternoon, I got a call from the bank. "Mrs. Turner," the woman said politely, "we just wanted to confirm the property tax renewal for your house on Maple Drive. Do you want to keep the same payment schedule as last year?" For a second, I didn't understand. "You mean my house?" "Yes," she replied. "It's still registered under your name." I froze. I'd forgotten. After Ryan graduated, I had moved into that house to help him transition into adulthood. He insisted on handling the bills, but I never signed over the deed. Everything, the land, the mortgage, the title, still legally belonged to me. Something inside me shifted. The pain that had hollowed me out for weeks began to harden into something else. Resolve. I thanked the bank representative and hung up. My hands were shaking, not from sadness this time, but from realization. The home my son had thrown me out of wasn't his. It was mine. That night, I drove back to Maple Drive. I didn't plan to confront him, not yet. I just wanted to see the house again, the life I'd built and lost. I parked across the street, turned off the headlights, and sat in silence. Through the curtains, I could see faint movement, shadows on the walls, laughter drifting faintly through an open window. They looked happy. I thought about walking up to the door, demanding an explanation, but something told me not to. Revenge isn't born out of anger. It grows quietly, like a seed planted in heartbreak, and I wasn't ready to let mine bloom just yet. The next morning, I went to the county records office. It took only 15 minutes to confirm everything. The deed, the mortgage, the insurance, all under my name. I even found an old clause that stated the property couldn't be transferred without my signature. Ryan hadn't even bothered to check. I left the office with the papers clutched tightly in my hands. Each step I took felt lighter, clearer. For the first time since that rainy night, I felt in control again. That's when I decided, if my son wanted me gone, he was going to learn what it truly meant to lose something. I waited. I didn't rush it. I let them think they'd won, that I was out of their lives for good. Meanwhile, I started making quiet moves. I visited a lawyer, reviewed my will, adjusted my accounts. Every decision was deliberate. If Ryan had forgotten who gave him everything, I was going to remind him, without saying a single word. 1 week later, I received a call from Jess. Her voice was trembling this time. "Mrs. Turner, we need to talk." I could tell from her tone that something was wrong. There was none of that calm superiority she used to wear like perfume. Now, her voice shook as if she'd just seen the edge of a cliff she hadn't noticed before. "What is it, Jess?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. I was sitting by the kitchen window of my friend's house, a cup of tea in hand, watching the world outside turn gray under a thick morning fog. She hesitated. "It's about the house. We got a letter." "A letter?" I asked quietly. "From whom?" "The county. Something about ownership records." I let a small pause fill the air before replying. "Oh? What did it say?" It said your name is still on the deed," she whispered, as if speaking it too loudly would make it worse. "Ryan didn't realize it wasn't transferred. He thought it was his." Her words hung there, trembling in the silence between us. I didn't answer right away. I wanted her to sit with the discomfort, to feel the weight of what she'd done. "Jess," I said finally, "that house was always mine. I only let you both live there." "I know," she said quickly. "And we're so sorry, Ryan. He didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what?" I interrupted softly. "Didn't mean to throw his mother out into the rain? Or didn't mean to forget who paid for the life he's living?" She didn't respond. I could hear her breathing, uneven and shallow. "I'll be coming by tomorrow," I said. "Make sure you're both home." When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, feeling a quiet satisfaction I wasn't proud of, but couldn't deny. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming the dignity they'd taken from me. The next day, I took the early bus back to Maple Drive. The same road I'd walked weeks ago, defeated and drenched, now felt different. The autumn wind carried the scent of change, the kind that comes when you've finally decided you won't be small anymore. When I reached the house, Jess was already waiting at the door. She looked pale, nervous. "Mrs. Turner," she said, her hands wringing together. "Please, let's talk inside." I stepped in. The air smelled different, lemon cleaner and tension. Ryan was sitting on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. He looked up when I entered, his eyes rimmed red. "Mom," he started. "I didn't know." "You didn't care to know," I said quietly, setting my purse down. "You never asked who still owned this home, who paid every last installment when you were too busy studying to check the mail." I swallowed hard. I made a mistake. "No, Ryan," I said. "You made a choice." Jess tried to speak, but I held up a hand. "Do you know what it felt like? Standing on that porch, hearing my own son tell me I wasn't welcome in the house I built? I thought I'd failed as a mother, but I didn't fail. I just gave too much to someone who forgot how to be grateful." He opened his mouth, but I kept going. "I worked 2 jobs, Ryan. 2. I went without new shoes for 5 years so you could have tuition, books, everything. And I did it gladly, because I believed in you. But when you let her," I nodded toward Jess, "convince you that I was a burden, you didn't just break my heart, you proved you never really understood love." He looked at Jess, but she couldn't meet his eyes. "I didn't convince him," she whispered. He thought It was best for us. Best for you? I laughed bitterly. Tell me, how does it feel now? Living in a house that doesn't belong to you? Surrounded by furniture bought with money you didn't earn? The silence that followed was heavy. Ryan buried his face in his hands. Mom, please. I'm sorry. I was stupid. I don't know what came over me. I felt like I needed to start my own life. Be independent. Independent? I asked. Independence doesn't mean cutting off the hand that fed you. It means standing on your own without destroying the people who built you up. I took a slow breath, feeling the anger that had burned in me for weeks finally settle into something calmer, firmer. You've got 30 days, I said. The house is being sold. Ryan's head shot up. What? You can't, Mom, please. I can, I said simply. And I will. You'll both need to find somewhere else to live. Maybe it's time you learned what hard work and humility feel like. Jess's voice cracked. Please, Mrs. Turner, we don't have anywhere to go. I looked at her for a long moment. Neither did I said softly. But I survived. Then I turned and walked out. The autumn sun hit my face, and for the first time in months, it felt warm. I didn't look back. I could hear Ryan calling after me, but his voice sounded distant, like an echo fading into something I'd already outgrown. That night, I stayed at a motel near the lake. I couldn't sleep. The satisfaction of standing up for myself was laced with sorrow. I dreamed of growing old in that house, surrounded by family, laughter, and memories. But what good were walls if the hearts inside them turned cold? I stared at the ceiling and thought about what came next. Selling the house would be easy, but I didn't want to do it just to hurt him. No, this had to mean something. Maybe there was a way to teach him without destroying what little bond we had left. The next morning, I called my lawyer again. I want to sell, I said, but I also want the proceeds handled a certain way. How so? He asked. I want half of it put in a trust fund for my grandson if they ever have one. The other half goes to a scholarship for single mothers paying for their children's education. He paused, then said quietly, That's poetic, Mrs. Turner. Maybe, I said, but it's fair. Later that afternoon, as I packed the last of my things from the motel, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan. Just one line. I don't deserve you, Mom. For the first time in a long while, I smiled. He was right, but maybe, just maybe, he could learn to. When Daniel returned from work that evening, the house was eerily quiet. The soft tick of the clock filled the living room, and the television murmured in the background, playing some meaningless show that no one was watching. He dropped his bag by the door and noticed the kitchen lights were still on. There was a note on the counter, folded once, with his name written in Michael's handwriting. His heart sank before he even opened it. Inside, it read, Dad, I think it's better if you move out. I need space. Please understand. I'll send you some money to find a place, Michael. Daniel stood frozen, staring at those words. His chest felt tight, his throat dry. The boy he'd worked for, sacrificed for, loved more than anything in the world, had written him off like an unwanted guest. He walked into Michael's room. The closet was open, half empty, suitcases stacked near the bed. The young man who once couldn't sleep without a bedtime story had already packed his father's memories away. Daniel's hands trembled as he touched the frame on the wall, a photo of the two of them fishing when Michael was 10. The lake behind them sparkled, their smiles wide, the kind of happiness that felt eternal. He whispered, I thought we were forever, son. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat on the porch, watching the moon climb high above the street. The house was silent, but in that silence, he heard echoes of laughter that no longer lived there. The next morning, he packed a small suitcase, just clothes and a few pictures. He looked around the house one last time before locking the door behind him. But something in him refused to feel defeated. He didn't know yet if it was pride or pain, but there was a flicker of calm in his chest. He wasn't going to beg. He'd let Michael live the consequences of his choice. Daniel rented a small studio apartment across town, one of those places that smelled faintly of dust and loneliness. He bought a second-hand chair and an old coffee pot. Every morning, he sat by the window, sipping black coffee, watching life pass by. Weeks went by without a call from Michael. Then months. Daniel kept working quietly, saving his paychecks. He mailed Michael a birthday card. It came back unopened. At first, he thought maybe he should go to him, try to talk things out. But something held him back. Perhaps the same instinct that told him this wasn't his battle anymore. Michael needed to learn something life hadn't taught him yet. One rainy evening, Daniel saw a post on social media, a photo of Michael smiling with friends, champagne glasses raised high. The caption read, "Finally got the house to myself." The sting hit harder than he expected. He felt a tear slip down, but it wasn't sadness anymore. It was a strange, quiet acceptance. He whispered to himself, "He doesn't know yet, but he will." Daniel still owned the house. The deed had never left his hands. It was a gift he'd planned to give Michael officially, after he'd proven he was responsible enough. But that day never came. Time moved on. 2 years passed. Michael lived lavishly, throwing parties, posting pictures of his so-called success. Neighbors complained about the noise, the constant stream of strangers. Daniel heard whispers. The house was slowly falling apart. Paint peeling, bills unpaid, mortgage notices piling up. Then one afternoon, Daniel received a letter, his name printed in bold on the envelope. It was from the bank. The mortgage on his house was 3 months overdue. He smiled faintly. So, it's time. He put on his old jacket, the same one he wore when he first signed the deed 20 years ago, and drove to his lawyer's office. "Mr. Carter," the lawyer greeted. "It's been a while." Daniel nodded. "It's time to transfer everything back into my possession. The boy's not ready to hold it." The lawyer flipped through the documents. "Legally, the deed's still in your name. You never completed the transfer." Daniel leaned back. "Good. Let's make that clear to everyone." That night, he drove back to his old neighborhood. The porch light was on, music spilled through the windows, and laughter echoed into the street. He stood across the road, watching his son dancing among strangers in what used to be their living room. For a brief moment, he almost turned back, the father in him whispering forgiveness. But then he saw a man stumble out of the house with one of Daniel's late wife's paintings under his arm, something Michael had let go carelessly. That was the moment something inside Daniel broke, not in pain, but in resolve. He stepped forward, his boots splashing through puddles as thunder rumbled above. He walked up the porch steps and knocked firmly. The music cut off. The laughter hushed. Michael opened the door, eyes widening in surprise. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Daniel smiled calmly. "Just checking on my house." Michael frowned. "Your house? You mean—" Daniel stepped inside, looking around at the wrecked furniture, the stains on the carpet, the broken frame of their family picture lying face down. "This place doesn't look like home anymore," Daniel said quietly. "But it's still mine," Michael scoffed. "Dad, I've been living here for years. You can't just—" "I can," Daniel interrupted, "because I never gave it away. The deed is still in my name." The silence that followed was heavy, almost cruel. Michael's face drained of color. His friends shifted awkwardly. One of them whispered, "Dude, what's he talking about?" Daniel looked around one last time, his voice firm yet calm. "You kicked me out of my home, Michael. Now I'm asking you, no, telling you, to leave my house." Michael stared, disbelief turning to anger, then to shame. "You? You tricked me?" "No," Daniel said softly. "I protected you from yourself." As Daniel turned toward the door, he heard his son's voice crack behind him. "Dad, wait." But Daniel didn't stop. Outside, the rain poured harder. He got into his truck, hands steady on the wheel, and drove away, leaving the porch light flickering behind him like a fading memory of everything he once built. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just felt free. The next morning, Daniel awoke to the sunlight creeping through the blinds of his small apartment. He hadn't slept much, yet his heart felt strangely light. For the first time in years, the heaviness in his chest had lifted. He made his coffee, sat by the window, and thought, maybe peace isn't found in keeping things, but in letting go. Later that afternoon, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He hesitated before answering. "Dad, it's me." Michael's voice was low, uncertain. Daniel stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he said, "I know. I didn't know about the deed," Michael continued. "I thought you gave me everything. I thought you wanted me to be independent." Daniel sighed. "I did, son, but independence doesn't mean entitlement. I wanted you to earn it, not assume it was yours." There was a pause on the line. Daniel could hear Michael breathing shakily. "I messed up, Dad," he said finally. "The house is falling apart. Bills are stacked up. I threw parties to forget how lonely I was. Everyone I called a friend disappeared when I stopped paying for things." Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Neglect always looks invisible until you stop pretending not to see it." Together, they started cleaning. Days turned into weeks, painting walls, fixing leaks, scrubbing floors. Neighbors watched in surprise. The same father and son who had once turned away from each other were now laughing, arguing, and sweating side by side. One evening, after a long day of work, Michael found Daniel sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. The air smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. "Dad," Michael said, taking a seat beside him, "why didn't you just sell the house after I kicked you out? You had every right to." Daniel chuckled softly. "Because I didn't build it for myself. I built it for family. And family, even when it breaks, you don't throw it away. You fix it." Michael nodded, silent for a while. "I never realized how much you sacrificed. Mom's hospital bills, my tuition, the house. I thought you just did it because you had to." Daniel looked at him. "I did it because I wanted to see you rise higher than I ever could. But somewhere along the way, you confused love with servitude. You thought I owed you. I don't, but I still choose you." Michael's voice cracked. "And I failed you." Daniel shook his head. "No, you just failed yourself. But that's how people learn. Failure is a teacher that never leaves you if you listen." They sat in silence, the orange glow of dusk fading into the night. For the first time, there was peace between them, a fragile, honest peace. Weeks later, Michael surprised Daniel with something. He had framed their old fishing photo, the one Daniel once found broken. Now it hung proudly on the living room wall, restored and shining. "I fixed it," Michael said. "Just like you said." Daniel smiled, his eyes misty. "Looks better than ever." Michael handed him a folded paper. "What's this?" "Something I should have done years ago," Michael said. "I talked to the lawyer. I want you to keep the deed permanently. I don't deserve it yet." And Daniel opened the paper and read the statement. It confirmed full ownership in his name. His throat tightened. "You didn't have to." "I did," Michael interrupted, "because it was never about the house. It was about respect. I lost yours, and now I want to earn it back." Daniel's voice trembled. "You already are, son." That night, as Daniel stood alone in the living room, he felt a quiet warmth fill the space. The ghosts of the past, the anger, the betrayal, the disappointment seemed to fade. In their place was something purer, forgiveness. He looked at the photo on the wall, his arm around a young Michael, both smiling into the Sunday. For years, Daniel thought revenge would heal him, proving he still had control. But now, he understood something deeper. Revenge satisfies the ego. Forgiveness repairs the soul. He whispered to himself, it wasn't about holding the deed. It was about holding the bond. Outside, the porch light glowed softly, steady, warm, unbroken. Winter came early that year. The first snow settled softly on the roof. Daniel and Michael had rebuilt with their own hands. For the first time in a long time, laughter echoed inside the house. Not loud or forced, but gentle, real. Michael had started a new job at a local architecture firm. Every evening, he'd return home tired but proud, with paint stains on his hands and hope in his eyes. Daniel would be in the kitchen, cooking stew or making tea, pretending not to notice how proud he felt. One night, after dinner, Michael said, "Dad, Do you ever think Mom would have been proud of us? Daniel paused. Every single day. She would have loved to see us like this. Not perfect, but trying. They clinked their mugs together and smiled. But peace, Daniel knew, wasn't the end of a story. It was a fragile gift, one that had to be guarded, not assumed. A week later, there was a knock at the door. Daniel opened it to find a woman standing there, early 30s, tired eyes, holding a small folder. "Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm with the county records office," she said. "You're Daniel Brooks, right?" Daniel nodded, cautious. "Yes." She held out a paper. "You might want to see this. It's about your property." Daniel unfolded it, his heart dropping as he read the letterhead. It was a notice of transfer attempt. Someone had tried to transfer the property deed using falsified documents. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Who filed this?" Rachel looked apologetic. "We can't disclose that yet, but it's under review. I came personally because I remembered your name from a community case. I thought you should know." After she left, Daniel sat at the table, staring at the paper. His mind raced. He knew Michael wouldn't do this. Not after everything they'd rebuilt. But there was someone else who might. A shadow from his son's reckless past. That night, when Michael came home, Daniel handed him the paper silently. Michael's face went pale. "Dad, I didn't." "I know," Daniel said quickly. "But do you know who might have done it?" Michael ran a hand through his hair, panicked. "There's a guy from my old crowd, Vince. He used to come over when I threw those parties. I think I left some documents lying around back then, and he might have—" Daniel finished the thought. "Taken copies." Michael nodded. "He's desperate. He got into debt with some pretty bad people." Daniel took a deep breath. "Then we'll deal with it together." The next day, they went to the records office. The clerk confirmed the forgery. Someone had indeed tried to transfer the house into a fake holding company linked to Vince's name. The police got involved, and after weeks of investigation, Vince was caught. When the officer brought him in for questioning, Vince sneered. "I thought the house was your son's. He said so himself, back in the day. Guess I believed him." Daniel looked at Michael, who lowered his head in shame. Vince laughed bitterly. "You rich folks and your family drama. Thought you could buy forgiveness with walls and deeds." Daniel stared at him calmly. "Forgiveness can't be bought. That's what makes it powerful." Vince rolled his eyes. "Yeah, well, it didn't stop me from trying." Daniel didn't respond. He didn't need to. The law would take care of Vince. But as they left the station, Daniel turned to his son. "Every decision leaves a trace, Michael. Even the ones we think we can bury." Michael nodded. "I know, Dad. I can't change the past, but I'll never be that person again." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's all I need to hear." Months passed. The snow melted, and spring arrived. Flowers bloomed around the front porch, wild and untamed, yet beautiful. One Saturday morning, Daniel was in the backyard when Michael approached him with something in his hands. A small, neatly wrapped box. "What's this?" Daniel asked. "Just open it," Michael said, smiling. Inside was a set of silver keys, engraved with the words, "To the man who built more than a house." Daniel looked up, moved. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Michael interrupted softly. "You kept the house safe. Now I want you to have the life you put on hold for me." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Michael took a deep breath. "I found a property listing near the lake. It's small but peaceful. You always said you wanted a place by the water. I bought it, for you." Daniel blinked, speechless. Michael smiled nervously. "I know you'll say I shouldn't have, but this isn't a handout, Dad. It's a thank you." Daniel's throat tightened. "You've grown up." Michael laughed. "Well, I had a pretty good teacher." The next week, Daniel visited the lake house. It was simple. Wooden walls, a creaky dock, and a view that stretched forever. He stood on the porch, the wind brushing through his hair, the scent of pine all around. He felt something shift inside him. Not pride, not victory, but peace. The kind that comes after long storms. He took out his phone and called Michael. "You were right. It's perfect." Michael chuckled. "I thought you'd like it. I do." Daniel said softly. Thank you, son. Over time, that lake house became Daniel's sanctuary. He spent mornings fishing, afternoons reading, and evenings watching the sunset dance over the water. Michael visited every weekend, sometimes bringing his girlfriend, sometimes just stories about work. Their bond, once fractured, had become stronger than ever, not because of money or houses or deeds, but because both had finally understood what truly mattered. One evening, as they sat by the water, Michael said, "Dad, do you ever regret paying for my college after everything?" Daniel smiled gently. No, because even though it took time, it led us here. You can't measure life by how fast someone learns, only by whether they finally do. Michael nodded, watching the lake ripple. I used to think you were trying to control me, but you were just trying to protect me from myself. Daniel chuckled. And I failed spectacularly, didn't I? Michael grinned. Maybe. But you also saved me just slower than I expected. They both laughed quietly, the sound echoing over the calm water. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel realized something profound. Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones we're meant to heal with. Pain, when faced with love, becomes the bridge that connects what was broken. He turned to his son and said, You know, Michael, I once thought revenge was sweet, but now I see redemption tastes better. Michael smiled. Then I guess we're both finally home. And for the first time in years, Daniel believed it. Summer arrived quietly, wrapping the lake house in golden light. The days felt slower now, peaceful, deliberate, like time itself was finally breathing again. Daniel spent most mornings on the porch, a cup of coffee in hand, listening to the soft lapping of water against the dock. The chaos of the past, the shouting, the heartbreak, the betrayal, had faded into distant memory. What remained was gratitude. One morning, a letter arrived. It was from the university Michael had once attended, the one Daniel had sacrificed so much to pay for. Curious, he opened it and found a note from the dean, addressed to both of them. Dear Mr. Brooks, we wanted to let you know that your son has been nominated for our Community Excellence Award. His recent architecture project, Rebuild Home, has been recognized for its impact on urban housing recovery programs. The values of resilience and family restoration reflected in the project are truly inspiring. Daniel smiled, eyes softening. Rebuild Home. The title alone said everything. That evening, when Michael visited, Daniel handed him the letter. Michael read it slowly, his expression a mix of disbelief and pride.